PlayStation's China Hero project is an initiative supporting China-based developers, and has produced beloved titles such as the cyberpunk action-adventure game Anno Mutationum and the side-scroller Fist Forged in Shadow Torch. Several other games are currently in the works, including the highly anticipated Lost Soul Aside. Yet, the sci-fi action game Awaken Astral Blade is an overlooked title that is about to release. Having recently played through it myself, I find it a strange experience to assess. Its premise is conceptually enticing, but ultimately not worthwhile.
Your Highness, once Yacha City in the Black. When you grow up, you will become the Queen, both as
Awaken Astral Blade follows a bionic girl named Tanya, currently assigned to a mission by her creator, Dr. Hervius, whom she refers to as Father. She's been instructed to investigate the Horus Islands. It turns out an investigation team has gone missing in this perilous region, and a phenomenon known as Carpus energy has turned the local wildlife into aggressive mutants. Throughout her adventure, Tanya gradually uncovers the area's history, her self-worth, and her place in the world. To be candid, I lost interest in Awaken's narrative about halfway through. This experience is reminiscent of the action-adventure Metroidvania Afterimage, which was borderline incomprehensible upon release. Awaken doesn't do much to make you feel invested, or at least not significantly. The dialogue is stilted with a genuinely horrendous English dub that feels lifeless. I can't imagine how long the directing process led to such a performance. The only potentially gripping aspect is the lore item descriptions, which have some semblance of intriguing content that doesn't feel awkward, yet they are purely supplemental in the face of a bizarrely paced story that does a poor job of introducing the setting, the characters, and their relationship. Thankfully, there are simplified Chinese and Russian voice acting options, potentially mitigating the story's shortcomings more elegantly than the abysmal English dub. In its essence, Tanya's struggle with her identity might pique your interest, but the intrigue never goes beyond that. If anything, you'll stick around with Awaken for its gameplay, which has its ups and downs. The combat system is pretty simple. Tanya has standard ground and air combos that can deviate into a few special attacks depending on timing. However, you have fewer than a handful of these deviations. Still, this design isn't poor by itself, especially since you gain other tools alongside the initial blades. These weapons have their own special techniques and best contexts for use, such as the scythe being used best for groups. Alas, one pressing issue lies in enemy design. Awaken reuses enemy types far too often, resulting in encounters that feel particularly identical, worsened by the sheer frequency of them. You'll be performing the same combos repeatedly, with regular foes not putting up much of a fight. This problem could have been lessened or even ignored if the combat feel was nailed down, but that's a mixed bag. Whenever you strike an enemy or object, there's always a brief, slightly perceptible pause meant to establish a sense of impact. However, its placement is jarring and comes off as unnatural. I can never fully get used to it. This feature is at odds with the rest of the gameplay, which boasts a relatively smooth frame rate despite a few drops. Ideally, this brief pause should have been reserved for finishing off enemies instead of every attack. Still, the boss battles are enjoyable. While lacking in depth and attack variety, they can put up a decent fight on your first few attempts, requiring at least a fundamental understanding of their patterns to achieve victory. The parry and dodge system amplify this gratification. Enhanced by the straightforward skill tree, these techniques are activated like in typical action games, providing a window of consequence-free attacks if you're successful. Awaken doesn't bring anything new to the table in these areas, but in the moments where the combat ideas show potential, the faults momentarily fade. The Souls-like elements of resting to respawn enemies and a healing item that recharges at these rest points are also present, though that's where the similarities end. Circling back to the skill tree, there is meaningful player choice between branches of active or passive techniques to improve, as well as enhancements outside this menu. These upgrades are tied to exploration, providing the needed currency known as ether and other materials. One notable ability to prioritize is a passive skill that increases the percentage of ether you receive, further boosted by an active skill that absorbs more ether from defeated enemies if you time a button press. These synergies aren't common, but they're appreciated where they occur. There are also various equipment types that improve specific areas, such as raw stats. In terms of exploration, Awaken is far too straightforward. Despite having Metroidvania components, you'll rarely have to think about where you're going to go or what you're going to do. Even though there's some emphasis on platforming, it's dull and never intuitive. The obstacles in your path feel shallow and obligatory, existing for the sake of it rather than enforcing creative problem solving with your abilities. The only satisfaction I derived from the optional puzzles that, while not groundbreaking, require more thought than almost anything in the main story. One of my immediately peculiar and subjective issues with Awaken is its presentation. The vibrancy and character design should be home runs on paper, but to me they come off as hollow and empty for reasons I can't quite pinpoint. Perhaps other players may feel differently, but to me everything feels vacant, especially the character models. On the other hand, the soundtrack fits the setting's ominous elements well with an unnerving atmospheric tone. If you're searching for a new action Metroidvania, Awaken Astral Blade shouldn't be dismissed outright. Its combat mechanics, upgrades, and boss battles can be fulfilling. Unfortunately, the intricacies of these systems often flounder, further awakened by a forgettable narrative that adds nothing to the experience. The replay value offered by multiple endings and unlockable difficulties isn't particularly appealing at all. I tried to focus on the positives during my playtime, which this review probably reflects, but even those have notable caveats. In all honesty, the China Hero project has much more entertaining experiences that are worth your time. Noisy Pixel is giving Awakened Astral Blade a 5.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.